It wasn't just President Trump who had a rough past 4 years. The Trump Organization itself was on a decline before the businesses were forced to deal with the pandemic. Efforts to sell Trump's Washington hotel were shelved, his New York office buildings were losing value, and his golf courses were facing the reality that younger generations aren't so interested. On the phone to discuss is Bloomberg's financial investigations reporter Caleb Melby. Caleb, great to have you on the show. The president entered office worth $3 billion. He's going to leave about $500 million poorer. That's according to the Bloomberg Billionaires Index. What happened under Don Jr. and Eric Trump's watch?
Yeah, there's a few things that really happened here. First, as you said, golf courses have not been generally a great investment overall, and they have more than a dozen at the Trump Organization. Second, of course, they ceased minting new international licensing deals while Trump was in office, and that was a really great way for them before Trump entered office to make, tens of millions a year simply by licensing his name to development projects all over the world. So that went away too. Then, of course, the pandemic hit, and that's going to hit their office buildings like 40 Wall Street and Trump Tower in New York, as well as others they own with Vornado Realty Trust in New York and San Francisco as well. So you saw this kind of grinding to a halt of new business and also a battering of the assets they held already.
Caleb, I want to talk debt here because as you and your colleagues highlight in the story here, the president right now is saddled with $1 billion in debt, the buildings, I should say, of the Trump Organization. Most of it's coming due in the next 3 years. At the same time, companies like Deutsche Bank and another financial institution do not want to work with the president any longer. What is the risk that's posed by this debt that's coming due? Right.
And that's where we see the incitement of the riot on Capitol Hill really starting to hurt them. Before then, Trump did have debt, but he also had assets, and he still does have assets. And you could see how he could refinance against those assets if he needed to, make up for any loans that might be encumbering properties that have been hurt by the pandemic. But that's no longer the case now that Deutsche Bank, Professional Bank, and others are no longer wanting to lend to him, and that's going to create real potential financial threats for him down the road. The story that you guys wrote, it's not just about the challenges that the president faces, but also potential opportunities after his presidency ends tomorrow at noon. You did speak to one executive in conservative media who thinks that Trump could still have a future there, pointing out that, hey, even there's an opportunity for controversial industries like online porn. How would the president move forward? It's in the story. It's in the story. How would the president move forward in that, given that the brand has just been so torched recently? Yeah, I mean that's a great question and a great point. But yeah, basically the idea is that in some sense, conservative media has always been controversial, and Trump's brand has included controversy. And even if it's like 10 or 15 million people who are going to be paying for a Trump subscription TV service, they're still going to be paying for that, and somebody, we don't know who, but somebody, maybe not a big brand name, will be willing to host that service.
Yeah, very good point. Bloomberg financial investigations reporter Caleb Melby. Caleb, this was a great story. We appreciate you taking the time to join us on Quick Take today.
The biggest stories the moment they happen from around the globe. Subscribe to Bloomberg Quick Take now for insight in an instant.